so you give me the thumbs up. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is going to be an information session for grades kindergarten through fifth grade. Tonight I have Principal Dr. Kenny here tonight, Mr. Harmelink, Mrs. Basting, and Mrs. Rizzo are all here, along with our technology director, Mr. Hanneman. We are going to try to give you the best overview we can of what is happening. We spent a lot of time today and over the last month planning very hard to get to where we need to be to open. And to do that, we need to fulfill the guidance documents from three specific guidance pieces. The first one is the State Education Department's guidance. The second one is the Department of Health's guidance, and the third one is the CDC guidance. We're looking at all three of those pieces, and we have to attest that we have completed the necessary pieces that need to be done for us to return to school. And I'm going to give you a brief gloss over as to what that looks like. I just want to say at the beginning, we are doing the best we can, and we are working as hard as we can to make this a safe return for your children, for our staff, for our faculty, and quite frankly, for us. But there are no guarantees. I can't tell you with 100% guarantee that everyone is going to be safe. It is an unpredictable virus, but we are going to do the best by going through the guidance and minimizing the risk. And that's going to begin with you. I have to say this at the beginning. Parents are going to be an integral part of the success or failure of a reopening plan. And one of the most important things we need to do as a community is going to be our health and safety checks. The parents, and I'll go through that in a little while, but you're going to hear me repeat that. You're going to hear me banging the drum, because if we are not honest about that, that will potentially contaminate the building. It will potentially take classes that will have to be isolated or quarantined, and it will have a ripple effect. So the number one thing that the health department talks about is the importance of safety checks before our students get on the bus, before our students come to school. And we'll talk a little bit about what happens after they come to school and how we're going to do some of the safety checks there as well. So we are working our best to provide you with a safe and sound education, as well as we want everyone to feel safe when they come back here. And that's really important in terms of social and emotional health. We'll all be talking about that. So the choice to return to school is going to be made in a very short window. And it's a very difficult choice. I'm not going to mince it. It's one of the hardest choices as a district we have to make. And we have to look at all of the data that we can. Right now, in its favor, is Dutchess County has a very low infection rate. It's of the people getting tested, it's below 1%. There are only a few hospitalizations right now in Dutchess County of people with COVID, with the COVID virus. And there are between 200 and 300 people that actively have the virus. That's from the current county dashboard. So on one hand, we want health and safety for all. And to keep people home is one of the options that we're looking at, and a remote learning is one of the options we're looking at, but that's not what we're working towards right now. Right now, we're working towards a full return K-8 and doing all we can to try and make that happen. And we are going to have a modified or a hybrid model for the high school as we move forward, and we're going to explain some of those things tomorrow night as well. So when I talk about the balance, we have to look at 3 or 4 pieces that we have to be concerned about. We want, obviously, safety is at the top, but we also have to think of in terms of safety and health is the students being home and not connecting with their teachers and their learning progress. We don't want it to suffer, but we do honestly believe that in-person instruction is the best for our students, especially at the beginning of the year. Everybody is talking about a second wave. And to me, that's an important piece, is that if we get an established relationship with our teachers and our students early on, that could have a positive impact over the course of the year if we do have to close school and if we do have to go to remote learning based on a local area spike or a second wave. So just to go over a few more pieces, the governor has stated in measurable terms what he wants for the districts to open. His measurement is 5% of the people getting tested would test positive for COVID-19. If it's below that average over a 2-week period, he believes that schools can and should open if they meet all of the guidance. The other piece that he measures is 9%. If everybody who takes the test, if 9% of the population start to test positive, his belief and his advisors say that is too high. We will have to close the schools and we will have to go with remote learning to stop the spread. So those are the areas that he is looking at. So where do we go with making this decision? We talk about the parents, and we wanted to ask the parents what they thought in terms of coming to school. So we did put out the survey, and at the survey, we needed the numbers to make sure we could figure out what our program was. So we had about a 70% response from parents saying they were going to send their students back to school. And we had about a 30% response from parents who said they were going to have their students on home instruction for the first until the middle of January, or near the end of January. So that split worked out for us. That's going to help us with having, if we had too many students, we couldn't have them all in, and we would have to go to hybrid. If we had too many students and parents that didn't want us to come in, that would have been a piece of data that might have stopped or slowed our plan for a full reopening. But having between 70 and 80% is a good group. The students who are not returning, however, I guess I just want to take a second and reflect on it. The students that are returning are not returning to the same school that they had been in March 13th and prior to. It's still going to be a little bit different. We're going to have the classroom set up differently. We're going to have students wearing masks. And I'm going to give you a little overview about those things before I turn it over to Mrs. Kenny, Dr. Kenny, and we'll speak about her plans. And then I'm going to ask Mr. Harmley to speak about his plans. And then hopefully we will take some questions and answers. We have a great stable of questions that were provided to us this afternoon and this evening. We've been looking at them, and we're getting more questions now. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of the questions tonight, but we will do our best. And I know that we don't have all the answers tonight because we're still working on some of the pieces. So with that, I just want to go quickly as to what the expectations are, and I'm going to try to do this where I'm answering some of the many questions that were provided as we go. First and foremost, you heard me talking about the health checks. We are going to be calling you every morning, and we're going to be asking you to do a health check on your child. Does your child have a fever? Do they have any of these symptoms? Do they have a cough? Do they, and we're going to list them, and you're going to have to respond. If you respond yes to that, they have a fever or they have one of the symptoms, we are asking you to keep that child home for that day. If you respond no, we will have that in our phone records. So everybody is going to be listed either yes or no every day. And the students who do not answer the phone, if the phone does not get answered, if the survey does not get done, they will be called in as soon as they come into school. And they will go to the nurse's office, and the nurse's office or healthcare aide will do a safety check for those students prior to or as soon as we can get to all those students. And we hope that there's not a lot of students. The safety checks are going to happen every day. We need parents to make sure that the correct phone number that they want us to call is done, and we'll probably either do another survey or we'll have our secretary or our staff call you to make sure that we get the right numbers. So when students are in school, there are basically three things we need to focus on at all times. And one is hand hygiene. We need to keep our hands clean, out of our mouths, out of our noses, out of our eyes. And every time we use our hands for certain things, we're going to need to do hand hygiene. The second thing is social distancing. All of our classes are going to be set up so that every student is going to be at least 6 feet apart from each other in the classrooms. So they'll, and that will provide some social distancing. The classes are going to be a little smaller in size because of that, and we're going to have some classrooms that are bigger, and so that they can have 25 or 26 in those classes, but those classrooms will literally be double in size given the new configuration. And then the last thing that is an absolute must is masks. Everybody, unless there is a medical excuse and a certified medical excuse approved by our nurses and your child's physician, are expected to wear masks the entire time in school. And that is, whether it's on the bus, they will not be able to get on a bus until they put on a mask. We will provide them a mask if they didn't have one that morning. However, we do want parents to partner with us, and we do want parents to have masks available for their children, both, as often as possible. And they break, and sometimes they rip. But we will have additional masks. I have an additional 20,000. We have a whole shipment of 20,000 masks that we're ready for, different various sizes, and we're going to give them out. And make sure that the bus drivers have them, because getting on the bus is the first line of defense. Managing available people. When and if we do find somebody who has symptoms, students have symptoms, we have developed an isolation room in each building. That isolation room will be manned by a home healthcare aide, not a home healthcare aide, healthcare aide, and they will. Our attempt will be to isolate the students and to have parents pick them up as quickly as possible. So please, I have to ask parents, if you are working 45 minutes away or an hour away, please have somebody who can come and pick up your child and bring your child home, because we want to get these people with symptoms out of the schools as quickly as possible so we can avoid any kind of spread and keep people safe. So it's our responsibility to make sure that we teach this. We teach those three basic pieces, and that we have our systems and structures in place. Again, the health checks, the social distancing, the hand washing, and the wearing the masks. Those will be the big components that we need to focus on. We are also going to be doing deep cleaning. We have we have them in stock, 5 state-of-the-art electro magnostatic fogging machines, one for each building, and then a backup in case one goes down. Those will be excellent. We're going to use them every single night in every single building. We're also adding some custodians. We're going to have 4 more custodians added during the day shifts, and the same added at the night shifts. And if we need to, we'll have some people come in for overtime if we can. But those are some of the pieces that we need to work on to make sure that you feel safe, to make sure that our faculty and staff feel safe, and that we feel safe bringing you back. So one of the other pieces in terms of a need to feel comfortable is the social and emotional well-being of our children and our staff. And we've been working on this in a number of different committees, and I'll certainly let Mrs. Basting, who led that committee, talk about that later on. But I just want to say that one of the things that we're doing that was relative to you is a slow start. We're going to have a number of teacher training days at the beginning of the year. We're actually going to look to add some teacher training days so that we rehearse and we practice and we see everything from the start of the day to getting off the bus to getting into the right building to getting into the classroom safely and how that's all going to work. We are not going to have all of the schools drop off their children in all of the grades on the first day and expect everything to go well. We're going to have a slow start, which means we're probably going to bring in kindergarten, 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade in on one day or even 2 days until they get the routine down, and then we're going to add a grade. And we'll see how it goes, and then we'll add another grade. So by doing that, I think we're going to get into a routine. We're going to get used to our pieces. We're going to see what works, see what doesn't, and make our adjustments for that, so that those students feel comfortable, and that we have enough staff, and that we feel comfortable moving forward to having those pieces populated. Now, one of the things that I'm just going to put some of the pieces together is to get some mask breaks, to get some chances to go outside and eat. And it is, I know some of the teachers want to teach outside as well. We are going to have a tent put up at each building. We have a big 30 by 60 tent that are going to be put up in different places in each of the buildings. And hopefully those will be used throughout the day to give students mask breaks, to let students eat out there, or to have a little social time instead of staying in their classroom. But I do think that was an important piece in terms of footprint and space utilization. We had to go to the state and get permission. We're still waiting for the approval, but that should happen soon. In terms of ventilation, there were a lot of questions that people were worried about ventilation, as are we. And there's a lot of complexities to ventilation. Fortunately, in most of our buildings, we have excellent windows and excellent coverages. So we can open windows, we can put a fan in the window and get exhaust out. What they don't want with rooms is having box fans or having oscillating fans in the classroom, swishing the air around. That's what they say not to do. We're looking at a mechanical engineer right now is advising the district. He's doing a few different buildings at a time. We want his okay, we want his approval, and we want to see how that moves forward. But having fresh air working through the building and exhausting it out the windows is one of the most effective ways to do it. And on the internal controls, we want to make sure we have filters that are good and that circulate the air. In some cases, they work against each other. I don't know if people have heard about Rev 13 filters, Rev 15 filters, but the thicker the filter, sometimes the less air gets circulated through our vents. And we have vents and we have ductwork in every classroom. And they do circulate a certain percentage of the air every hour, and that's great, and those are all working. But if we put a higher level vent in there or a higher level filter in there, what happens is it can slow down how much air is being ventilated and circulated. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. I don't want to get too detailed, and I apologize if I'm getting too detailed, but I just want you to know that we are paying attention to that. In terms of the bus runs, at Wingdale and at Dover, there used to be 10 buses to transport the students in. We've doubled that. We're going to have an additional bus run this year. So we're going to have 20 buses to bring the students in from Wingdale, 20 buses to bring the students in from to Dover Elementary School, and 20 buses to bring the students to the middle school and the high school. So that is going to be beneficial. We can pretty much guarantee that when we have 70% of the students and double the buses, we're going to have, rough math, about 40% of the crowd on the bus that we had compared to last year. So I can pretty much guarantee that we're going to have one student in one seat. Unless there's an emergency, it's going to happen sometimes where multiple parents who said that they were going to drive their children, pick their children up at home couldn't, and there might be two students in a seat once in a while until the first bus student is dropped off or a few students are dropped off. So I'm not going to guarantee that it will never happen, but for the majority of bus runs and the majority of students, you will be one student in a seat, and we do encourage children of the same family, children who live together, to sit in the same seat so that we can add more students safely to the buses. So that should not be a piece that will stop us from moving forward with the full opening. I also just wanted to make a quick piece on transportation and buses, that students are not allowed to use hand sanitizers. I know that we've had several questions. Are buses going to be equipped with hand sanitizers so every student can use a hand sanitizer on the bus? The answer is no. It is illegal in New York State to have hand sanitizers and give out anything with an alcohol base on the bus because it can be flammable. So that's one of the pieces that I wanted to remember that I put in there. But I do hope that the bus runs will be a little bit shorter, but it's going to take time to drop students off because just like we can't have all 20 buses dropping the students off. We're going to have to do about 3 at a time, and that's going to take time. So that's why we had to delay the starts. And we can predict it, but we think it's going to take some time, and it's going to get shorter as we practice it and as we get better at it. For stated purposes, we are going to have to take attendance, and if we do have students both in school or out of school that are chronic absentees, we will have our teams working with you. We have an additional social worker this year. We have our full psychology staff and our guidance counselors. They're going to try to reconnect with people and make sure that everybody gets moving forward. So as we talk about some of our programs tonight, and as I turn it over to the elementary school principals, we're talking about in-person instruction. For the most part, our plan to return safely. There will be some discussion about remote instruction, and we want them to be as close to the same thing as possible. But we do know that in-person instruction, for the most part, is the best form of instruction. And we want to know your kids. We want to know your students. We want to be able to do some baseline testing. We want to be able to establish those relationships in case we have to do remote instruction. And then there is the third model, which is the hybrid model. And that would be to further dilute the classes, and that would be about an every other day piece. But we're not going to spend a lot of time on the hybrid model tonight. We're going to look at the other two. So I just want to go through my notes very quickly. The other piece is, it's very important for, two more pieces. We wrote a grant. We have, every student is going to get food in the school district, K through 12, every day, breakfast and lunch, free of charge. Whether you are in school or whether you are home, you are eligible for that food program. And we are going to be working at how we're going to be delivering those, and we'll give you more details on that as well. One of the benefits of that with this virus is we're not going to have to collect money. We're not going to have to collect cash. Your children will order their lunch that morning, and it will be delivered to the classroom, and they will be eating in the classroom. For most of their lunches, if they don't go out to the tent or if they don't go outside, given the weather, now be weather permitting. The other component that we have to address is the technology and connectivity. Especially in the elementary schools, every student will have a Chromebook this year, and we've provided a lot of training for our teachers. Our teachers did a lot of training on the fly last year for Dover Elementary School, but our K-2 teachers also did some training at the end of last year in anticipation that they might need this. We know the packets were for what we were doing at the end of last year, and by the end of the year, everybody wanted to be more in touch and in contact with their students, and we had the good fortune of having the Chromebooks from the Smart Schools Bond, and we can, and we have them to give out to everybody, and we'll be talking about the details to that. The other piece is connectivity. If you don't have connectivity, internet connectivity, you need to tell us, you need to call us, and we need to get you internet connectivity in any way that we can do that. And we got to most families last year, but we know there will be some new families this year as well. The one piece that I guess it's more for tomorrow night, but we are going to try to do the ESL students and the special education students in high school are going to be every day, 4 days a week in the high school. So I'm jumping ahead of things, so I'm not going to go into that detail, but I did want to let everybody know. But if we come to a full return here, that wouldn't be an issue. But if we do go to remote or hybrid, we will try to have the students who have IEPs and the students who are, new English language learners in as much as possible, if not every day. And that will to assure their growth, because those are usually the two groups that get behind with distance learning. So I apologize for taking so long, but I did feel the need to get through that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Kenny, Dr. Kenny, I apologize, to talk a little bit about what she has done in her planning down at Wingdale Elementary School.
Thanks, Mr. Sherny. Good evening, everybody. I understand fully this is such an unusual circumstance, but I just wanted to take the time to say that I'm looking forward to seeing all the kids again and welcoming you back to Wingdale. I can tell you that we have been working endlessly to get the building prepared, to keep it safe for the kids. We have signage, we have measurements. The kids will fully understand where their social distancing is. Our classrooms are set up to keep 6-foot social distancing between desks. Obviously, we had to take a few things out of the classrooms to make room, to make it comfortable. But there are indicators on the floor so the students know where their desk should be and how they should walk in the class. We will take all the time that the kids need to get them prepared, to get them ready so that they know how to walk around the buildings. I moved around some of the classrooms in order to keep the grade level cohorts together so we know who's traveling in what areas. I am trying to keep the day as normal as possible. I know they're young, I fully understand that. So what I'm trying to do is to keep the in-person learning and the remote learning levels of service equal. Students will still be having specials, whether it's in person or on remote. Students will still have lunch. They will still have time for recess. I know there was a lot of questions. Obviously, we can't allow all the kids out on the playground at once, but I will have a rolling schedule. All the kids will have the opportunity to use the playground equipment just in smaller groups. We are fortunate that we have a lot of property around the building where the kids can still go outside and get some air. I know there's a lot of concerns about masks, and I get it. They're 5 to 7 years old. I've worked in several mask breaks throughout the day where they can take them off. During independent work, they also can take off their masks. And if it gets overwhelming, we can have a kid step outside. We're very flexible about that. We can have them take off their mask. They can get a little bit more of a break if that's needed. As far as the computers go, we are very fortunate that every child will have a Chromebook this year. And I will be sending out another school reach and messages via email to let you know when remote learners can pick up their Chromebooks. And then I'd like to have the kids work on the Chromebooks in class to get very comfortable with it. And I will send out another time where we will have afternoon and evening hours where the parents can come in and pick up the Chromebooks for the students. As far as the remote learners go, I will have a dedicated teacher on each grade level that will work with those remote learners, just as they're in school. So they will be there. We will have schedule printed out of what time they need to be on the computer and time, obviously, that the parents can connect to the teachers. I'm just trying to think of things. Pickup, parent drop off and pickup will be similar to last year. Obviously, I'm expecting a few more people to drop their children off or to drive the children, but we will have that the same way. Once the buses leave, parents will drop off in the morning. I'll have designated areas, and I'll certainly have people out there in signs. And parent pickup in the afternoon will be prior to the buses coming in. Again, the same way, similar that we did it last year, where you'll pull your car up and we'll bring your child to you rather than you coming into the cafeteria. We are talking about that slow start and kindergarten. I know my office called everybody today to set up some time so that you can come in and see the building next Tuesday and Wednesday. I fully understand you're sending me your most precious commodity, and I'd like you to have the opportunity to see how the building looks, and the students too. We usually have something bigger, but obviously with COVID-19, it's impossible to have all the people in at once. For the first and second grade parents, I know your kids are comfortable with the building, but I just want to let you know that if there is some trepidation coming back for you and your student, if you call the office, I'll be happy to schedule a visit. We'll keep it short, but you can walk around the building and see what's done. And I'd really like to see the kids. As far as coming off the buses in the morning, I have a process where I'll be taking them off in grade levels. Each grade level will be entering through a different part of the building so I can keep everybody safe. Again, we have the signage on the ground. We have other options so they can stay 6 feet away from each other. I know it's really hard to tell a 5-year-old this is what 6 feet is, but we'll be working on that, and we'll work on that every day with the kids until they get comfortable. I know there's a lot of other questions. I know that we talked about supplies. I've purchased all the supplies for the kids. They will not be sharing crayons, pencils, earbuds. Everybody will have their own personal kit for classroom and for the art room. I'm asking that you do not send backpacks to school. There will be nothing that will be going home with them. Eventually we'll send the Chromebooks, and that's how homework will be done and reading assignments on the Chromebook. What you can send in obviously is a lunchbox with a snack in it. As Mr. Tierney said, breakfast and lunch will be provided, but if your child chooses not to have that lunch or that breakfast and you want to send something else in, you can send it in with the lunchbox. I will make sure that's put in a cubby. Everything will be safe. Obviously, this is all new. I understand that you're nervous. I understand that the kids want to get back to school, and I think that's a great thing. Again, I will do my best, as always, to make you comfortable and to make the kids comfortable being in school. The biggest thing I want to see that they want to come back. So you can call the office. I'm there. I will set up a time where you can come in to be comfortable. The kindergarten parents, we already have a schedule. I will be putting something out for a virtual curriculum night sometime in September. And if I can possibly do it, we'll do in person in small groups. But that's really, I still have to try to figure out all that scheduling. I'm there if you have any other questions. Obviously, I'll be answering your questions as we go through the evening, but if something comes up, please feel free to give me a call at the office. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kenny. Mr. Harmelink, I'd like to give you a few minutes to talk about your plans.
Sure, thank you. So the day at Dover Elementary will start around 8 o'clock. We are still trying to figure out with the bus company how that schedule will happen. Because of all the students who are not coming to school, obviously the numbers on the buses are already lower. and we are planning on having 3 buses unload at a time. Students at Wingdale will be going into 3 separate entrances. 3rd grade coming into the main entrance, 4th grade through the dining hall, and 5th grade at the far right end of the building. So we're not sure how long all that is going to take, depending on the process, because as Mr. Tierney mentioned, we are going to have a list of people who did not answer the screening phone call. And in the morning, my secretaries and I will coordinate that list with the bus lists. So we will know who is coming off the bus who has not answered that screening call, and we'll have to separate them, and we'll have a smaller tent outside the main entrance where they can wait to be seen by the health aide or the nurse. Parent drop off, I know there were some questions about that, will be after the buses have unloaded. So we're thinking that the bus unloading will take about 20-25 minutes, and we're kind of have to see how that plays out. Deputy Sal will be available in the morning, and parents will be lined up on Wing Avenue, and the buses will come in through the other entrance, and then parents will be able to drop off. Students being dropped off will come in through the dining hall entrance, the cafeteria entrance, and again, students who have not been screened will be, pulled aside so that the health aide or the nurse can see them. From there, the day runs sort of the way it always has. I know 3rd grade parents are not familiar with the process yet. Each classroom will have a table outside the door with a to-go breakfast on it, so students can grab breakfast as they come in. The district is purchasing hand sanitizer dispensers for the hallways, so the students can sanitize before they have breakfast, and again after breakfast. As Mr. Tierney mentioned, we're hiring additional custodians to help with cleanup, remove the garbage from breakfast, sweep up anything that gets spilled, those kinds of things. Obviously, when students are eating, they do not need to wear their masks. I know there are some questions about masks. So that's breakfast, lunch. There will be 2 scheduled mask breaks besides that for each classroom. And, at recess, they will not have to wear their masks. Students who are doing band and chorus in the morning, 3rd grade students are welcome to sign up for chorus. Those will be held in the gymnasium so that students can be 12 feet apart, which is one of the requirements in the guidance. And I know some of the chorus numbers are over 24, which is what we can accommodate in the gymnasium with the 12 feet distancing in all directions. So there may have to be several sessions of that. But students still will be able to participate in band and chorus. Specials will be at the same time, starting at 9:15 with 3rd grade. The only special that students will leave the classroom to attend is physical education in the gymnasium, because we are able to accommodate them 12 feet apart in all directions. Otherwise, the art teacher, Mr. Stevens, the librarian, the music teacher will all be coming to the classroom for their special and doing it in the classroom. I meant to mention that the other time the students can remove their masks in the classroom is when they are doing silent work on the Chromebook, or if they're doing a writing assignment and there's not an interactive class discussion going on. Lunch schedule is a little bit staggered because the dining hall can only deliver about 50 meals at a time because of the hot lunches, which are coming in hot boxes. So those lunch schedules are they're 10 minutes off in each direction, but around the same time as they were. I did want to say for 3rd grade parents, next week I will be creating a visual tour of the building, and I'll post that on the Dover Elementary Facebook page. If you are not familiar with that, it should be easily searchable. If you find it, it's the double dragon logo. So that's the page you want to like for news and information about Dover Elementary, because I know you're not connected on Dojo yet because you don't have your teacher assignments. Teacher assignments is something we're still working on because depending on the classroom, for instance, in 4th grade, I think one of the classes still had 18 students and one of them had 11. So we're going to have to balance out the numbers so that we get as few students in each room as possible. At recess, there's a staggered schedule as well. So 2 classes in the building will be going out at a time, but they cannot play together because we want them in cohorts. If there is a COVID scare in any classroom, we want to be able to have as few students affected as possible. But that recess schedule will be available soon. For the end of the day, parent pickup will take place after all the buses have picked up. As buses pull up, I'll announce over the PA system which buses are outside, and students from all 3 grade levels will go out. We'll have the special area teachers, aides, and assistants all helping with loading the buses, checking off that the students who are supposed to be on that bus are on that bus, so we know we're not missing anyone before we send them off. So again, the parent pickup time is not clear yet because we don't know how long that process is going to take. But the dismissal probably will start around 2:40, 2:35, something like that, at least to start with, so we know, so we can figure out how long that's going to take. I know there were some questions about students who are not attending in person. Chromebooks will be available that first week of school. And as Mr. Tierney mentioned, because of the slow start, we're not sure if that is going to be September 2 for just 3rd or if it's going to be a later date. And I think that kind of covers everything at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Harnley. Just to mention some of the work that we had done today, is we did look at possibly changing some of the pieces to the calendar, but I don't want to make that final until I have a board meeting to go over that. But we are looking at tentatively more teacher training in the front for the first 3 or 4 days, and then the slow start would happen probably after Labor Day. But I don't want to say for sure until we've talked with the union and we've talked with the teachers and the board before I make that formal. Now with that, we tried to give as much of an overview as we can. I hope that was helpful. I think we tried to answer some of the questions. I asked Mrs. Basting to go through the questions and direct them to the people who needed to. So she was looking, there's always multiple questions. So she was trying to take some of the same questions and solidify them. And then she was going to ask the different people what that would be. And we'll go through as many questions as we can and see if we got some new ones. So Mrs. Basting, would you please from some of the work that you had done, will you ask each of us the questions that need to be asked?
Thank you and good evening. We'll start this question first with Dr. Kenny. If the children are socially distant in class, why do they need to wear a mask at their desk? They said to wear a mask if you cannot stay 6 feet apart.
Sure, understandably, we're trying to follow the guidelines from the CDC and lessen the exposure of any type of COVID-19 symptoms or particles. So we're asking that the kids, keep a mask on and be 6 feet apart. Obviously, there'll be times in the day when the mask can come off when they're independently working, lunch, during mass breaks. But for the most part, we're asking that they have a mask on and we're staying 6 feet apart to lessen the exposure.
Also from Dr. Kenny, why couldn't the kids eat in the cafeteria if they're provided more tables or even desks and broke up the lunch times differently?
Unfortunately, although the cafeteria looks large, I measured it all out, and it's not possible to bring the kids into the cafeteria, even if I came in 1 or 2 classes at the time. And due to the fact that music needs to be 12 feet apart, we'll be using the cafeteria for the special for music, and maybe some other type of activities that are going to require more of the distance for the students.
Mr. Tierney, when will the plan for hybrid or in-person be finalized?
Well, I don't know if it'll ever be finalized until we get to that day because it is such a fragile system. We're trying to build it as best we can with a full return. With that said, I am having meetings with the parents tonight some of the questions. We're looking for feedback. I'm going to be meeting with the high school, middle school parents tomorrow and listening to them. And I'm going to be meeting with the teachers and the staff, the entire district staff on Thursday. So we're going to continue to talk about this. The ultimate decision is made by the Board of Education with all the information I can provide for them. I'm going to do my best to make a recommendation public this Friday. It might wait until Monday or Tuesday, but again, I know that you want to know as quickly as possible. But it is very difficult to make this decision, balancing all the factors, looking at all the data, and there are so many pieces to this. The more pieces you have, the more fragile it becomes. So we're continuing to work at this. We're continuing to do our to-do list and make sure that we have all of our equipment, have all of our training, have all of the guidance met. And we still have some unanswered questions. We haven't received all of our N95 masks yet. We have been promised that they will be here, but we don't have them yet. That would make us pause, and we'd have to wait. We have to make sure our ventilation is good. Some of the things I can say we've done, and we're ready to go. Some of the things we're still in progress for looking at. We have to make sure that all of our pieces are together before we can safely return students. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize with mask use, I know in the beginning it's going to be hard, but we're going to ask that everybody be wearing their masks as much as possible because we want to exceed the guidelines. And as we get into our systems and as we learn how to do that, wearing the mask responsibly, then we can look to having discrete mask breaks in class. But initially, I'm going to insist that we have every student wearing the masks as much as possible, with mask breaks being organized. Another piece that we are looking into, and this is another thing that we had talked about today, and I don't have a definitive answer yet, is are we going to close school if the temperature is too high? We hadn't, in my history here, we haven't closed school because of hot temperatures. However, when you add a mask to the mix in September and we get a hot 90-degree day, given some of the buildings, it can be awfully hot on the third floor at Dover Elementary School, but it can be hot in Wingdale and Dover at certain parts of the high school and the middle school as well. So if you add the masks to that, that can be a difficult situation. So there might be situations where I would either, see the weather coming and try to make an early call to say that we are going to cancel school that day, or see if we can go for remote learning that day based on the heat. But that's another one of those if-then questions I don't have a complete answer for.
Mr. Tierney, what's the current status of the HVAC system, and is there a plan to upgrade the system or, for example, central air conditioning?
Well, air conditioning is not an option. We are not, the building's not equipped for that. We don't have the approximately $2 million it would cost to get air conditioning in our system. But what we are doing, we are working with a mechanical engineer. They have, the mechanical engineer is working with our buildings and grounds people and writing reports on each building. And then we are going to be looking at those recommendations, seeing what needs to be done for us to be in compliance. Our facilities review has been quite good, and we do have an excellent ventilation system. We changed all of the vents and all of the fans over the course of the last few months. Our custodians did a great job. We are still looking into the benefit or the whether it's not a benefit in some of the buildings in some of the areas about what I had discussed earlier about the additional filters, like the Rev 13 filters. They're great at getting dust out of the air, but it does slow down the amount of air that gets circulated, for one. And two, the focus of taking particles and dust out of the air is important, especially so that the aerosols and that the virus wouldn't spread through them. But if we also have an open window, that really defeats the purpose of having those filters in place. So it is more of a complicated answer than I'm giving you, but I just wanted to show you some of the layers of complexity when you're looking at these. So I will certainly make sure that the engineer gives us the thumbs up that we have proper ventilation, and that the one thing we cannot do is have fans, teachers bringing in fans or having fans in the classroom that are blowing the air around. That's an absolute no-no from our discussions with the health department.
Mr. Tierney, are all staff and students being tested?
No, all staff and students are not being tested for the virus prior to coming back to school. Just to reiterate, everyone, teachers, staff, and students will have to do a safety check every morning, and they're going to have to call in the results of that safety check. And if they cannot pass the safety check, if they have a fever over 100 and any of the other symptoms, we ask them to stay home as best we can. But we cannot mandate a COVID-19 test, but I'm not discouraging it at all. I would like to take a minute to one of the things that I forgot to mention, and I wanted to make an appeal to parents, is to think about getting a flu shot. We really would like to see all of our students, or as many of our students who can, to think about getting the flu shot, and the parents to get a flu shot, because as you know, flu spreads quickly, and it mirrors a lot of the symptoms that COVID-19 have. So please think about providing that. I know there will probably be a run on flu vaccines, but there is going to be it would benefit us greatly if everyone got the flu shot. We are going to offer it on Superintendent's Conference Day here for our teachers and our staff, and we hope everybody else will think about and consider getting the flu shot as we move forward.
Mr. Tierney, what happens when students refuse to wear a mask?
Well, anybody that's doing anything that will not promote the safety of the students and staff here will not continue to be in this school. So students that we're looking at masks just like shoes, just like shirts. That's what you come to school with. A mask is now part of what you need, and I know early on it's going to take some getting used to. It's going to take some additional breaks, and I think that as we do it, the more we do it, the more you get used to it. I have some friends in the medical field, and I come out of the grocery store panting sometimes when I've been in there, and I said, how do you do it? He goes, well, you just build up a tolerance and you get used to it, and it's going to take a while. And I can see my tolerance when I put a mask on for a long time. It's not as bad as it was 2 months ago, but it's still difficult. But we're going to have to get used to it. And any student who just flat out will not wear a mask, I'm sorry, but they're not going to be welcome at school, because it is a health and safety issue.
Mr. Tierney, assuming there'll be children kept home for colds and such, if your child is out sick or forced to quarantine due to a classmate or teacher with COVID symptoms, will they be taught virtually during that time?
The answer is yes, they will be taught virtually at that time. How they are going to be taught virtually is still, we're still looking into the details. And we do think that the classroom teacher at that point will be responsible for the material for that student. They will not be going into the virtual classroom, so to speak. But while they are quarantined or while they are home, just like if they had gotten a broken bone or they had to stay home for a broken ankle or something like that, the teacher of record or the teacher that they have would be responsible for providing them with the work. One of the questions that's come up repeatedly, and I don't have a definitive answer to it yet, would be, because there are some factors involved, if a classroom has to be quarantined, if we do get a positive case in a classroom and those students are quarantined, what would happen then? And we don't know if we would have the teacher teach remotely to that class. It would have to depend whether they had symptoms or they were sick. It would have to depend. I have to discuss that further. So I don't have an answer for that question. But I do have an answer for the initial question. I don't have an answer yet for what if an entire class gets quarantined? How will that be treated? Whether we would get a substitute or whether we would do remote learning for that group.
Mr. Harmelink, I'm sorry, Dr. Kenny. Children in Wingdale are looping with their teachers. If we decide to learn remotely, who will be teaching them, and how much virtual teaching learning will they receive?
So unfortunately, if the child is going remotely, they will not be with the teacher that they were planning on looping with in most cases. One teacher will be assigned to the remote students given the numbers. And with that being said, I will be sending out new assignment letters because, again, with breaking down the classrooms to keep them smaller, and with parents choosing to have their children go remote, the teacher assignment will change. So I'll be sending that out this coming week, along with a fact sheet about how the building will be run, what kind of other questions I can answer for you, and some other statements.
Dr. Kenny, when will the students get their bus schedules?
So the schedules come out from the bus company themselves. As soon as I can finalize the last list, I'll send those over to Susan Langton at the bus company. She usually turns them around pretty quickly. You will get some type of notice in the mail that gives you an approximate time of what time the buses will be arriving. And as far as dismissal, like Mr. Harmeling said, it's going to be, some practice runs in the beginning, so the times will change. And once you get those bus times, then my office will send out the bus passes. And again, they'll have the time and the pickup route on there.
Mr. Harmelink and Dr. Kenny, when will the list of supplies be sent home, and how will it be sent?
I think Dr. Kenny answered that for Wingdale. At Dover Elementary, students will need a backpack because the Chromebook will be going back and forth after an initial 3-week or 4-week period of getting them used to the Chromebook in the classrooms. For the students who are attending in person, they'll also need headphones or earbuds. The earbuds should be in a plastic bag, clearly labeled with their name. They're going to need a water bottle. Obviously, they're going to need a mask or two, and a pencil sharpener. I think that's it, but that list will be published on the Facebook page and Dojo, so parents can see it. It's a short list. All the basic supplies we were able to purchase, as Dr. Kenny did as well.
And I just wanted to add, kindergarten parents were asking for a change of clothes. When you come in next week, if you want to bring them in, that's fine. Otherwise, you can just send them in with a bag with your child, or drop them off with parent drop off, and we'll make sure that you get those.
Dr. Kenny, if a first grade child doesn't know anything about technology and the parent has little technology experience, will there be a class to show how to use a Chromebook so that the parent can help the child? And along with that, when will they be getting Chromebooks and how will they be distributed?
Absolutely. I could probably sit in those classes myself. So for remote parents, we will be putting videos out for children as well to learn how to use their Chromebooks. And I will set up times prior to that first week of school, that September 8th date, around there, for parents of the remote learners to come in and pick up the Chromebooks. As far as the students that are in person, we will have the kids working on them, the first couple of weeks of school so that they're comfortable. We'll put videos out for the parents. And then once we're comfortable where we're going to send those Chromebooks home, they will be staying home. If you ever watched a first or second grader get on the bus, first thing that gets thrown is their backpacks. So we don't want to take that chance. So the parents will be picking them up. And obviously, if you have questions, the teachers are very responsive in answering the questions that any parent may have with use to the Chromebook. So we'll have both videos. We can answer your questions. I will set up dates that remote parents can pick up the Chromebooks and sign off on the agreements. And then I will tell each parent for the in-person as well when they can pick them up. I'll have afternoon hours, and I'll certainly have evening hours for those people who work.
Mr. Tierney, if a parent signed their child up for remote learning or distance or in-person learning and situations change, can they opt for the opposite of what they chose?
No. The answer is no. We're really going to hold parents to that decision. I know it's difficult to say that, but it's like I had said. You're hearing all of the planning that's been going on and how fragile the system can be. So just a change in a few students could have a tremendous impact on a whole classroom. We're going to try to fill them up as best we can for remote learning and for in-person learning. But if it goes to a certain point and we get extra students, and that would break down the 6-foot social distancing, and that would cause a multiple group of problems. So for now, and I've talked to the board about this, and I know it will be an issue, but we're going to hold parents to that unless we get a medical reason for the change. We are going to ask all the parents and the students to stay where they are currently put in. And once the school year starts, that's where we're going to commit you to be.
Mr. Harmelink and Dr. Kenny, will each child's desk have a protective barrier? And what will recess look like in each of the buildings?
So as far as Wingdale, if you're speaking about a plexiglass barrier, we will not be having those around the desk. However, what we are providing are cardboard corrals, and the kids know how to use them. They're study corrals or testing corrals for privacy. Those will be used probably during independent study time when the kids working by themselves. Maybe, for lunch just to eat, and then they'll be giving time to talk to each other. So we're going to have to see how that's going to work out with them. Recess, I'm detaching recess from the lunch times just to give the teachers more flexibility, especially the remote teachers and you at home, to have a certain amount of time that will be a break for your kids to be away from the screen. Recess will be a little bit different, like I spoke a little bit about before. I'll have to schedule classes because we can't have more than 2 classes out on the playground to use the playground equipment. However, we do have the side yards, we have the backyards. Kids will be outside getting some fresh air. I think that's the biggest thing. We're trying to find different ways that the kids can play 6 feet apart, play some type of game. Obviously, we have some hula hoops, we have balls, we have things like that to hopefully keep the kids entertained. And the option is that we can split recess into 2 breaks as well. So maybe they'll have a break in the morning and they'll have a break in the afternoon just to get them outside and, away from their desk, masks off, so they have some time.
At Dover Elementary, we also have the trifold cardboard barriers that all the teachers use for testing, so they'll be using those at other times of the day as well. Recess, as I said, 2 classes at a time, but they will not be able to interact with each other, so we keep the cohorts together. However, I know one of the questions had to deal with the playground equipment itself. They will be allowed to use the playground equipment. If you're familiar with the Dover Elementary playground, one class can use the large playground equipment that's closer to the building, and the other class can use the swings and the sort of gymnastic equipment that's in the wood chips, and then they can rotate on a day-to-day basis.
Mr. Harmelink, if a student is doing online learning full-time until January, is there anything the school will do to help make the students still feel a part of the school or class that they're in?
Well, all the online kids will be in a class. So, for instance, just picking a teacher, Mrs. Arnold won't be teaching her class of in-school students as well as the students who have chosen to stay home. A separate teacher will be teaching all of the third grade remote learning students as a class. So that teacher rather will be, welcoming her class in the beginning of the year, making them feel part of the school community as much as possible, doing morning meeting, checking in with them, doing small groups, so that it should feel like a classroom and not just assignments being set up online the way it was in March, April, May.
Dr. Kenny, will there be packets given to students for online learning, or will everything be digital?
At this point forward, we hope that everything will be digital. It won't be what we had in March. Packets won't be being delivered. Everything should be digital at this point.
And also, Dr. Kenny, what will the physical classroom look like? For example, the bookshelves, the work tables, the storage for backpacks, lunch boxes?
So we've tried very hard to keep things, familiar with the kids, obviously to hold on to social distancing. Some bookcases had to be removed along with additional tables. But each teacher will have either one of the moon tables, the kidney tables, a desk, obviously. The kids will have their desks. The cubbies. I'm so sorry. I thought I was unmuted. Let me start this over. So we are trying to hold to keep the classrooms familiar to the kids, but obviously to keep social distancing, we had to remove some of the furniture. So some of the bookcases are out and some of the additional extra tables where the kids used to work are out. I've kept, a table where a teacher can work with the child if they need to, and they'll be provided with a plexiglass barrier to protect both the child and the teacher. The desks, unfortunately, are not going to be grouped in groups of 4. They will be similar into rows because we don't want the kids breathing towards each other. We're going to keep them in rows. There are bookcases. Unfortunately, again, given the aspect of COVID, the classroom libraries will be used at a very minimal basis. But kids will be able to get some type of book that they'll bring home. We'll have epic books online. So it will be familiar. Bulletin boards will be up. Kids' work will be displayed. I can tell you we'll do our very best to make it a happy, welcoming place.
Dr. Kenny, if students have parents in 2 different households, how will that work for pickup, drop off, and any phone calls that they'll need to receive, for example, the health screening?
So if kids live between 2 different households, we will have, pick up and drop off will be the same. If you're using the bus, we'll just tell the bus company on what days, what address will the child take, what bus route will they take. We do it all the time. As far as the phone calls, I'm assuming that there will be 2 phone calls done for both the houses so that wherever the child happens to be residing that morning, they'll get the phone call. It's something we work with all the time, as long as we get a note in and we're given the days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if they're on X bus route, that we'll make sure that they get on that route. And if there's any change, we'll just expect it in writing from the parent.
I want to just step in and add to that. Is in the past we've been very good about allowing parents to call in that day and say, I need my son or daughter to go home on this bus or that bus. Given the way that we're figuring the buses for now, that is not going to be something that we're going to do. You're going to go on the buses that are set up at the start of school. There aren't going to be any changes where they're going to go to a friend's house or they're going to go to this house. Whatever's set up early needs to be so that we can keep those buses at a safe level of students on there.
Dr. Kenny, will the same teacher teaching in the classroom be teaching the second group of students remotely with the hybrid model?
No, Now, given the numbers again and trying to keep the numbers even in the class and to stay with the social distancing, the students that chose remote will have a specific remote teacher on each grade level.
Mr. Tierney, how are you going to handle flu season? If a student suddenly spikes a fever, is a COVID test mandatory before coming back to school? And will a mandatory 14-day quarantine be required even if the test is negative?
Well, if they have a COVID-like symptom, we will isolate them and we will send them home. From there, there are three things that they will have to do to come back to school. And it's an either or. We can't force anyone to get a COVID test. But if they do get a test, that is one way that they can come back to school. That they were tested, they are negative, and they are symptom free. The other is that they can be on the quarantine for 10 days symptom free. If they're quarantined for 10 days and they have shown no symptoms, they can return. But earlier they can return if they have a doctor's note. And let me explain that a little bit. Everybody knows their child, but we also need to know the doctors know your child too. So I know for me, I can speak for myself. Come August, October, usually right around October, between October 7th and October 15th, whether it's ragweed season or whatever, I get very congested for about a month. That's the worst time of the year for me, and I know it's coming. So if I have those symptoms, I would still need to get a doctor's note to say that yes, these are symptoms, whether it's a migraine headache, whether it's something that students get on a regular basis, like my allergies. Their doctor's note clearing them to return is one way. A negative COVID test is another way, or quarantining for 14 days symptom free is the third way that they can come back to school.
Are there adequate facilities and
Dr. Kenny, with lowered classroom occupancy, are there adequate facilities and qualified staff in the schools?
Yes, at this point, we do have, we have the room to make the classroom smaller, to keep the kids socially distant, and we are fully staffed and ready to go.
And Mr. Harmeling, what time will morning parent drop off and afternoon pickup be at Dover Elementary? I understand that the buses unload first, so I'm trying to narrow down a time.
Right. So drop off for buses is somewhere between 8 and 8:20, probably 8:25. We're going to have to, again, see how long that process takes. So parent drop off will be somewhere between 8:25 and 8:40. Pickup will be the opposite. So buses are probably going to start loading at 2:40, which should get them out by 3 o'clock. And then parents are able to pick up. The pickup for parents will be, students will be held in the gymnasium. There'll be somebody in there with a walkie-talkie, a teacher, and there'll be somebody outside, and they'll announce which parents are here to pick up, and the students will be sent out. So you won't come to the dining hall as you used to. I know third grade parents, you don't know that system yet, but that'll be the pickup system. So again, the timing will be a little flexible, but those are rough right now.
Dr. Kenny, when will the new kindergarten students receive their screening?
So we're hoping to do assessments on all the kids within the first few weeks of school. Obviously, I want to take the first week or so just to get the kids used to being in school, to adjust to the new setup, their new teachers if they have a new teacher, and then we'll continue on with the screening.
Mrs. Rizzo, will students with IEPs be reevaluated for additional services because of the changes being made to their environment and the regression they endured from last year being cut short?
At the beginning of the school year, all students in grades kindergarten through 8 will be assessed to determine their current performance levels. At that time, teachers can make recommendations in the event students need additional support.
Mr. Tierney, how are you going to ensure that parents are being honest while screening their children prior to sending them to school?
I can't know that for sure, but I do think it's one of our responsibilities to educate all the parents on how important it is for the safety screenings to occur. On top of that, when we are adding 3 additional healthcare aides and a nurse to our staff, and when they are not in the isolation room or when they have time, they are going to be doing random checks of students in classrooms. And calling them down, or even going to the classroom and taking temperatures and talking to people. But we are going to be diligent about this. It is by far the number one thing that the health department said in our meetings was, before they get on the bus, those health checks need to be taken seriously. And I can just say from my experience, people are taking this seriously. And if we want to keep our schools open, we have to spread the word, and we have to bang the drum, and we have to get everybody on board with this. Because if you just want to send your student in because, well, they have a little bit of a fever, or they have a little bit of a stomach upset, you're putting everybody at risk. And, we will try to check them visually when they come in. We're not going to be checking every student every day when they come in. After, we need the parents to help. And we will be doing random checks as often as we can, and that'll help too. But we really feel that this is important. This is going to be a team effort. We're going to have to teach you, persuade you, ankle bite, whatever it takes. We're going to need that to happen. And that's going to be a strong piece to the success or failure of us opening and potentially getting a spike. And we don't want that to happen.
Mrs. Rizzo, what options are there for students with IEPs that also have medical issues that make them high risk for severe COVID illness if infected?
Safety precautions are being taken for all students to keep them safe during this pandemic. We've ordered additional PPE and some specific for students with disabilities that have differing needs. So we're trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. Additionally, the medically fragile students can also opt for remote learning and still get their programming and related services based on their IEPs.
Also, Mrs. Rizzo, how's the district planning to support children with building level services with their 504s and IEP plans that are being homeschooled this year? What are your plans to improve the quality and quantity of services such as PT, OT, and speech?
All the programming and related services that the students would receive in school will also be provided through remote learning as well. So they will get their accommodations, they will get their programming, they will get their specialized instruction, and so on. Related services will be prescriptive and based on the needs of the students, and they'll continue to get their related services, whether they're in person or remote.
Dr. Kenny, how's the district planning to support parents that choose to keep their children home? Will parents be given access to advanced lesson plans or course syllabus to help teach the children?
So, just like if we were in school, we will have some type of curriculum night where the teachers do go through and discuss what will be taught that year. Obviously, we follow New York State standards with scope and sequences. Using Big Ideas Math, there's a scope and sequence in the beginning of the book. As far as reading, the teachers will go more in depth. Obviously, I want everyone to feel supported, whether their kid is there in person or their child is remote. We will have times where you can certainly contact the teachers, hopefully have some office hours where they'll have Google Meets with the kids. Parents are more than welcome to get on that meet. I understand the kids are young, and you'll be their best advocates. And at any time, it's always been, my rule, at any time, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the teachers to discuss what's going on, or to myself, and I'll certainly get back to you. We are hoping that students that are remote, you know, it's an expectation that they'll have the I-CAN statements, which are the targets, you know, the learning targets for the students. And by the closure of that day, to give the kids a heads up and to give the parents a heads up of what will be happening the next day. But again, open communication is going to be our best avenue. If you have other questions, you know, we certainly can discuss that. I understand it's different when you're going to be a remote learner, and we will do our best to give you the plans ahead of time.
Mrs. Basting, let's do one more question.
Okay. Mr. Tierney, I opted to send my child back full-time. If and when she cannot handle mask wearing, can I then opt as a parent to pull her out and keep her with remote instead of this becomes an issue? I'm sorry, if this becomes an issue.
Not without a medical excuse. If they have developed something, or if there's asthma, or if there's something related to them not being able to wear a mask, and even then, we would try to have them come back to school. And we will have some students in school without a mask. If they have a medical reason as to why they can't wear a mask, they will be in the classrooms, and we will maintain social distancing. But based on the medical needs of certain students, and that will go for the buses as well. They will need to practice social distancing if they're not wearing a mask. That won't be a lot of students, but we're going to try to hold the line because, as I had told you, it's a very fragile system, and if the numbers sway too far one way or the other, it could have an impact on our health and safety, and it can have a big impact on our schedule and whether or not we can maintain it. So, you know, with that said, I'm going to ask that we wrap up tonight. We will look at the questions and the comments, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can over the course of the next few days. I want to thank all the parents for listening and watching. I want to thank Mrs. Rizzo, Mr. Harmeling, Dr. Kenny, and Mrs. Bastings for all of their help in getting this together. So I just want to say good night to everybody. Be safe and well. And we will make a decision shortly. I'm sorry it's not sooner, but we have to weigh everything that we can before we make a final decision as to what we're going to do. Thank you.